saying that before you can solve the problem, you have to first of all admit that there is a problem.
True.
And I think that if the president is still not seeing that, and then I think we still have a long way to go, because even his counterparts at this point have agreed that indeed
but maybe he agrees that there is a problem, but not in distress. You know, it's English language anyway.
Okay.
A man in distress is different from a man in problems.
I mean, for a country to be receiving aid from from another country in war, I think that defines distress.
I think that's another conversation altogether. You want to join federal government and Obi's words. Well,
I mean, how else can you define distress that another country is in war and has been in war for years now, are sending you aid, and their per capita is actually doing better than yours, which you're not in war, and you will have more arable land, but they are cultivating even more. I mean, at this point.
Well, that's an interesting conversation that we may get to touch on later on in one of the papers that actually focused on that. Ghana's central bank suspends forex licenses of 2 Nigerian banks. Detail of this is on page 24 of the papers that actually focused on that. Ghana's central bank suspends forex licenses of 2 Nigerian banks. Detail of this is on page 24. Some fireworks there from Ghana's central bank. I got to understand that part of central bank operators licenses that were suspended by the CBN, some are actually owned by people from outside of the shores of Nigeria.
Oh, wow.
So it may not be surprising to see that maybe this is just a tit for tat kind of thing, with Ghana Central Bank also suspending the FX license of both the countries that are involved. That's just my take on that. Quickly, we move to the Nation newspaper, which is has a repeat of some of the stories that I've already touched on in Daily Trust. But as usual, Senator Jimo Ibrahim, who is hoping to be the next governor of Ondo State, has been very, very busy on the front page of the Nation newspaper for quite some time now. So we'll leave that to your visual pleasure. But above the masthead of the Nation newspaper, our economy not in distress, says Tinubu. Reforms will take country out of challenges. We've touched on this. 72,000 tractors needed to enhance food security. I hinted at this. This was the Minister of Agri, Senator Senator Kyari, yesterday at sectorial debates which held at the National Assembly, where that was beautiful. Actually, I never actually paid attention to that, but they say it's been going on for some time.
Okay.
It was, heads of agencies, ministries coming together to just give Nigerians update on what they are doing, what the challenges they are facing. And it took place at the National Assembly, a very suitable place, if you ask me, where Nigerians who are interested in what's actually going on in their country, people participated, and it was a robust conversation. So the Minister of Agri, of course, he also made some comments as to reasons why we're having food scarcity. He blamed it mostly on, he said, of course, flooding that happened, then climate change, and he said also something. Of course, Buhari must be brought into the picture again. that Naira redesign policy that many farmers couldn't, because when he first said it, a lot of people stared like, how? Wow. But when he explained it, it made sense that most of the local farmers at that period, that was when they were supposed to have, to sell. Some were supposed to sell their harvest and then be able to buy. That was when they were But that Naira redesign made current for the next couldn't. And they couldn't produce. I'm sure you recall how some of them just had to sell off. They had to give away prices, and so the repercussions are some of the repercussions are what we are now reaping in food scarcity and high cost of the ones that are available. But he said 72,000 tractors needed to enhance food security. He said already federal government has already bought 2,000 tractors for distribution. And the federal government has planned that in the next 5 years, it will progressively buy 2,000 each year to add to the existing one. And
so how do they meet that 72,000 targets if we're just going to be purchasing 2,000 in a year.
In a year. So it's like he's telling you that although we need this number, but this is what we can afford, and we can do over time.
All right.
All right. So Binance exits Nigeria over forex crisis. We've touched on this before, and we'll quickly just move to the Guardian newspaper, which, if you ask me any day, anytime, I'll tell you it's one of my very favorite papers in Nigeria without any apology. Really.
The Nation. Right.
No, the Guardian newspaper.
Oh, okay, the Guardian. I was going to say, are we talking about, right, no. I would agree with you. It's actually mine, because for whatever reason, you never find that the Guardian are following the crowd.
Exactly.
They always have their detailed stories,
you must learn.
their infographics. You
I
have
will
to
always
learn.
tell somebody that you can't take the Guardian and not learn. You must learn something new. Because just take a look at the infographics they have given you. Consumers switch to used gadgets as FX crisis worsens tech adoption, and they've given you some details, some very important details for you to go and you know, feed on.
When I looked at the story, I was quite surprised with when I looked at the story, I was quite surprised with the details that they provided.
Honestly.
And, you know, stating that the last time container that had, you know, computer gadgets and, you know, similar gadgets that landed in Nigeria was in the last quarter of 2022.
Wow.
And that's the result of, you know, challenges in accessing forex. And it's going to further witness a decline consistently within the next 7 years.
So you read this and then you understand, or honestly.
And, you know, stating that the last time container that had, you know, computer gadgets and, you know, similar gadgets that landed in Nigeria was in the last quarter of 2022.
Wow.
And that's the result of, you know, challenges in accessing forex. And it's going to further witness a decline consistently within the next 7 years.
So you read this and then you understand already.
You understand the problems. I mean, the Guardian does a beautiful job. The Guardians are not just reporting events and stories. They do their research, and then they get you that, as opposed to, you know, for some of the phones and other gadgets are declining because people cannot afford it, and they would rather just go for fairly used products and all of that. And so this, as stated by Guardian, the Guardian newspaper, is going to worsen our tech adoption. And definitely. To slow the next 7 years, which will continue to further witness a decline, except of turning events of things.
Of course, a couple of other stories besides the infographic there on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Were there fresh doping hurdles for Team Nigeria ahead of Olympics? Of course, the Olympic team there, preparation for Olympics. Of course, there have been allegations here and there about doping Olympics. Of course, there have been allegations here and there about doping here and there, and one wonders, you have not even gone.
And you know you're going to be tested, so why do you put yourself in such difficult position?
Well, we hope they sort that out before the due date. Although it's actually a news analysis on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper for those who are interested in the details. Reps uncover fraud in seaport concessions, summon ministers. Of course, it's also on page 28 of the Guardian newspaper. Reps uncover fraud in seaport concession, summon ministers. Definitely, ministers of transportation, minister of the blue economy, minister of finance, definitely are among those to go answer questions on these concessions. Now, no country provides equal opportunities for women. This is World Bank asserting. No country.
Wow, I think while that can be true, we can say that there are other countries that are doing better than most countries. We can say that comparatively, right? We can say countries like Scandinavian countries are doing beautifully in terms of, you know, equal opportunities for women and, you know, considerations across sectors for women. And politically speaking, we can say Rwanda is also doing well, but in terms of economically speaking, and I think that they are still, you know, grappling with that.
And economic power, they say, is the real power, actually.
Economic power is the real power, which is why you can never talk about, you know, advancing women's political rights or women's rights generally without talking about economic empowerment, because the reasons why we are not even there is very very, closely linked to our economic empowerment and access to education and all of that. So yeah, I think that while that is true, we can also learn from other countries that have made leaps and bounds in that regard.
All right. Alleged dollar bribe, court stops Ganduje's probe. Alleged dollar bribe, court stops Ganduje's probe. Of course, they applied for, what do they even call that again? And the court, of course, graciously granted that.
Perhaps we need to revisit.
I think Peter Odili did that on a very potent corruption case that was ongoing on him, and he got that granted courtesy of his wife. I
think that points to a very huge gap or loophole in our judiciary that needs to be fixed.
You can just go apply to a court that this case should not even be touched.
So what's the point at the end of the day? It does not make any sense.
You advance your reasons, and the court actually sees reasons with you that this case,
when there are clear evidences that you may likely, be guilty. So I think that these are gaps that needs to be closed in our judiciary, and it has to be done through legislation. But then at the end of the day, like we say, that there are certain laws that will make are very unlikely to be passed by our legislators, because at the end of the day they find it's going to be injurious to them and their colleagues. Of course. But we really need to look into that, and if it's going to take a decade-long advocacy until we get there, and that's something that we can begin from now.
All right. More food-laden trucks seized at borders as International Monetary Fund seeks end to hardship. More food-laden trucks seized at borders seeks end to hardship. I listened to the Controller General of Nigeria Customs Service also yesterday on the same platform, sectorial debate at the National Assembly, where he was given details of the activities of the service, including seizure of trucks. I can't recall the number now, but very large number of trucks that were attempting to smuggle food items, grains, out of Nigeria. He said that Nigeria we are in an emergency state, and there has been some policies that have been put on ground, particularly with respect to exporting certain grains out of the country.
Since we have
not had enough. So you can imagine that people are still getting those grains, and they are taking them out of Nigeria. So he made mention of certain very impressive numbers as to seizures that they have made. And then you remember that there is now a policy by the government directing the Customs Service to distribute the seized goods rate.
Yes, which they did.
They did, and distribute the seized goods. I think the first one was that they should sell at subsidized rate.
Yes, which they did.
They did, and I think along the road distributed.
Well, while that's good, I think that the customs are actually being faced with a lot of allegations at the moment that they need to speak to, and not just allowed to be thrown under the carpet. Because and also one of the things that I think we've not put into perspective when we're talking about increase in cost of commodities and goods and all of that is the increase in tax and duties that the customs have imposed, and which is also responsible for the increase in the cost of some of the goods and commodities that we purchase in the market. Because if we have duties and imposing them on imported items, I think that's one conversation that needs to be had amidst the recent investigation by FIJ and the allegations that have been made. I think that they need to come out and speak to that, and also sanitize the entire system.
All right. A couple of other stories there. Federal government maintains UAE visa ban on Nigerians subsist. Rumors started flying yesterday in some even traditional media platforms that the ban has been lifted. But federal government is telling you now that don't take it to bank. The ban still subsists. Whatever that will do for those
perhaps there are still
some areas to be cleared.
Negotiations still ongoing to lift the ban, but it's still on. So for those of us into the UAE, sorry to disappoint you.
All right. Insider collaboration responsible for over 70% of bank frauds. This is according to the EFCC boss. We saw this yesterday also, and he also made mention of this yesterday, and I couldn't agree less with him that most of the frauds reported in Nigeria are in collaboration with banks in Nigeria.
I mean, it will not make any sense if there are no collaborations
Of
whatsoever.
course.
So I think that we need to go after them. We cannot have a situation whereby we admit that we know what's going on and then
not
be
do anything.
crippled to not do anything. Okay, now that we know what are the next steps,
thing
what
to
are
be
we
done?
doing to ensure that?
Well,
this
thankfully,
doesn't
the CBN is rising to the occasion. Of course, with the seizure of licenses of those portfolio BDCs, about 4,173 of them. Professor Uchi Waleke, a professor of economics, has also come out to say that, well, CBN has done well, but banks are the culprits. That BDCs do not do things on their own.
So
they do it in collaboration with banks, of course, even on banks, because the commercial banks. And then finally, Sharia Council urges federal government to end hunger insecurity. Is this call necessary?
I think at this point everybody wants to be seen as I have said something in support of the masses and to push that I am standing with the people. Well, so yeah, everyone need that wants to matter in the scheme of things has to make their voices heard and not to be judged by posterity and say that where were you when things were going tough? So, yeah, that's why most of the stories.
Well, Debbie, we have quite a number of other papers to take a look at. Even though most of the stories are repetitions of the things we've touched, we have been signals that our time on this segment has come to an end today. It's as if we just started, actually.
Absolutely. I was actually very much looking, to the next paper on the war of words with the federal government. But I mean, we've touched on that, so that's fine. So on the war of words with the federal government, but I mean, we've touched on that. So
that it's time for us to say goodbye on this segment of the program, to go join Dr. James Komolafe and his team on the behavioral check segment. But behavioral check segment, do stay tuned. We'll be right back. The studio
Thank
today
you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right, we'll go join Dr. James Komolafe, aka Dr. Long.
Your behavioral health doctor, handling the good, the bad, and the ugly without the drugs. Welcome still on this very compelling series on emotional dehydration. The journey of 1,000 miles, people say, begins with a step in the right direction. The topic I want to relate to today is before dehydration, what happens? What happens before I find myself in the pool of emotional dehydration? So many things go the wrong way before it eventually shows up on the surface as dehydration. Can I shock you? The first thing that happens to you is that you accumulate stress. Stress is your number one enemy. When it is in the intermediate and in the long run. Stress is good in the short run. And I'd like to let you know that we're still on this very compelling series on emotional dehydration. The journey of 1,000 miles, people say, begins with a step in the right direction. The topic I want to relate to very many occasions, people don't know their limits. And the few who know tend to breach such limits. So there's nothing bad in knowing your limit, even when you are not limiting your knowledge. Stretch your mind so that you can accommodate more. Please don't allow for stress. Also, please put proper protocol in place. The word deadlines is a commonplace phenomenon in the individual lives, in families, in homes, and much more in the organizations and offices. Deadline, deadline, deadline. Oh, I'm on deadline. Doctor, I'm on deadline. Every time, deadline. Now, look at it. Deadline. How many words can you find there? 2 words. 1, dead. 2, lines. In another way, line of the dead. So when you are critically on deadline without respite, it means you are treading on dangerous lines, fatal lines. And that's why your guess is as good as mine. Here and there, there's hardly any week we don't hear of sudden collapses. And it can happen anywhere. Cross lines. And it can happen anywhere. In the house, in church, in society, on the land, on the air. Even people sleep now, they don't get to wake up. Why? Emotional dehydration is ravaging many lives. Emotional dehydration is ravaging precious talents. Precious talents across the nation. So what do you do? Please, lifestyle. So what do you do? Please, don't wait until you are fact out. And that I will gladly send to you for free. You can run your behavioral checkup. A checkup from the neck up to be sure you are good neck and live young, long, and at the same time, very strong. I hope you pick a lesson or two here. You can revive. You can become refreshed again. You can bounce back to your normal order and gain traction. But I hope you pick a lesson or two here. You can revive. You can become refreshed again. You can bounce back to your normal order and gain traction. 999-220. I say it again. +234 8035 999-220. I and my critical team will support you to get it back. Don't wait until the chips are down. Prevention, they say, is better than cure. Thank you very much. See you next time, and bye-bye.
You're welcome back from that very important segment. Of course, Dr. James Komolafe, aka Dr. Long Life himself, always leaves you with those tips that if you keep to them will help you, stay healthier. As he always. You're welcome back from that very important segment. Of course, Dr. James Komolafe, aka Dr. Long Life himself, always leaves you with those tips that if you keep to them will help you, stay healthier, as he always puts it, physically, mentally, and spiritually. From one health segment to another, because we're very lucky this morning to have seated already in the studio a very, very important personality, a son of the soil, but of course, he's doing it elsewhere, showing the stuff Nigeria is made of, but he's back home to talk to us about a very, very, very important matter. For those who have been suffering sickle cell disease or have relatives who have been suffering sickle cell disease, this is the time for you to stay tuned and stay attentive. If you have others to call, please call them, because this is going to be to talk to us about a very, very, very important matter. For those who have been suffering sickle cell disease or have relatives who have been suffering sickle cell disease, this is the time for you to stay tuned and stay attentive. If you have others to call, please call them, because this is going to be a very, very important conversation. But before then, let me introduce my guest. We have with us Professor Emmanuel Pepper Jr. He is the Director, Implementation Science for Global Health Program, New York University School of Global Public Health, New York, USA. Good morning, and it's good to have you, Prof.
Good morning, and it's really a pleasure to be here and relate to your audience and communicate what we're doing here.
Thank you very much for making it to the studio this morning. In your school, that is School of Public Health in the New York University with the University of Abuja, kindly take us through what that event was all about.
Sure. In collaboration with New York University.
The event yesterday between your school, that is School of Abuja, kindly take us through what that event was all about.
Sure. In collaboration with New York University, the University of Abuja, and SISTA, which is the Center of Excellence for Sickle Cell Disease Training, it's actually in Nigeria using hydroxyurea. So that is the basis of what we're doing.
Okay. You mentioned using hydroxyurea. We know that the management of sickle cell disease is there.
It's been there. Pain, crises, and other negative health outcomes due to sickle cell disease. So improve the quality of people's lives, in fact. So, yeah.
Okay, so sickle cell disease with treatment using hydroxyurea is no longer a death sentence.
Individuals in Nigeria are on hydroxyurea who have sickle cell disease. We believe that we can improve that to over 50%, bringing health benefits to those individuals their sickle cell disease properly.
Okay, so what's the collaboration all about? What's the new
bring on board is that we're trying to work with health prescribing hydroxyurea to eligible patients. Then we're going to provide training for them to be more confident in providing hydroxyurea to their patients. Hydroxyurea providers to see what are the reasons that they are stabilized on that particular drug. So we're targeting healthcare providers, and then we believe that by giving them the confidence to prescribe and manage patients on hydroxyurea, that what we call uptake will be more common, and they will prescribe more hydroxyurea and improve the outcomes, health outcomes of people with sickle cell disease in Nigeria, in Abuja, and specifically in Nigeria.
But from your own observation or interactions or what I would call research, have you been able to find out?
Hydroxyurea requires a little bit more of a close management of healthcare providers, and then we believe that by giving them the confidence to prescribe and manage patients on hydroxyurea, that what we call uptake will be more common, and they will prescribe more hydroxyurea and improve the outcomes, health outcomes of people with sickle cell disease in Nigeria, in Abuja, and specifically in Nigeria.
But from your own observation or interactions or what I would call research, have you been able to find out why other health management experts, doctors, haven't been prescribing hydroxyurea despite these advantages?
Yes, so Professor Nudu, who my team collaborates with her team on, actually did some great qualitative studies looking at hydroxyurea uptake. It was not necessarily beneficial to their patients. And then the other thing was that many physicians were uncomfortable prescribing hydroxyurea because it requires a little bit more closer management compared to other. But that was sort of the main factor, and I think those price points issues are now being dealt with because now the National Health Insurance Scheme has announced that sickle cell disease is a vulnerable population and will cover the cost of requires a little bit more closer management compared to other. But that was sort of the main factor, and I think those price points issue and will cover the cost of hydroxyurea. So more close monitoring of sickle cell patients.
But why wouldn't a physician be comfortable prescribing hydroxyurea if it has all these advantages aside the close monitoring, as you say, that it requires?
Right. That's a great question. I think there are several factors in it. I think that side effects of hydroxyurea, but that's only experienced in about 15% of the population. The majority of the population benefit very, very well from hydroxyurea. So I think it might be that reluctance that I might do some, there's the close monitoring aspect of it, and then there are also some of the potential negative side effects of hydroxyurea, but that's only experienced in about reluctance that I might do something that could possibly harm my patient, weighing the balance between that and the health outcomes, look after the well-being of their patients. And I understand that, but we believe that if we can get a greater uptake more people will benefit, and then more people are outcomes.
So with this collaboration between your school and the University of Abuja, you hope to provide, you mentioned that, but you've also mentioned that the NHI, National Insurance Authority now, usually in Nigeria, is still very, very low and very, very poor. Find people who suffer sickle cell disease.
Right.
So what is this collaboration between your school and University of Abuja, hoping to do to enhance or to expand the scope of coverage insurance among Nigerians generally?
So I can say that we are not necessarily here to expand the scope of coverage, but what we can possibly through the National Health Insurance Authority, and that shows that your symptoms are managed well. You have less outcomes in terms of negative outcomes. Professor Nudu's work has shown that people on hydroxyurea actually need to take less blood, right? So that's a cost benefit in terms of it. And then also overall your quality of life improves, right? So you don't have pain crises. You're not going to the hospital anymore. So although we are not here to increase health coverage, what we can hopefully show during this work in 5 years from now, that having well managed either through the insurance health scheme leads to better outcomes for individuals with sickle cell disease.
All right. So essentially, cost. It's the only way to bring down the cost now is for people to get health insurance coverage.
It is now covered under the National Health Insurance Scheme. We had a great individual who talked at our conference yesterday talking about the health insurance scheme, and that was the representative from the National Health Insurance Scheme from Abuja, actually.
Okay, so I don't want to leave your engagement yesterday alone yet. So I would want to ask, what are some of the highlights of that engagement yesterday, apart from, of course, putting pen to paper?
I think we had a lot of notable speakers in terms of talking about leave your engagement yesterday alone yet. So I would want to ask, what are some of the highlights of that engagement yesterday, apart from, of course, putting pen to paper? I think we had a lot of notable speakers in terms of talking about what progress has been made, what else needs to be done. So we had policymakers, we had also significant parents, and then we also had patients in there. And I think that this work cannot be done with those two categories, right? The caregivers and the parents, and also the patients, the sickle cell warriors in terms of it. And also, it's important that we create collaborations with our policymakers, because when we have the evidence that this works, we want to make sure that that is translated into policy, sort of global policies, to help people. There's one thing I want to point out.
Please go ahead.
That the reason why we're doing this work in evidence that this works, we want to make sure that that is translated into policy, sort of global policy in terms of not only in Abuja, but in Nigeria, to help Africa. Nigeria has the largest sickle cell population in Africa. And then the third and most important thing, Nigeria is by far as I know, other African countries that have sickle cell patients actually have to import their hydroxyurea from other pharma companies. So hydroxyurea, which is of high quality here, is very, very affordable in that case. So it makes Nigeria a model in terms of sickle cell disease management for the entire African continent, which has the largest proportion of individuals with sickle cell disease around the world.
So because I was going to ask about cost, that whether it is actually produced here or it is costly because it has to be imported from outside. But now you've mentioned that on the continent, Nigeria, I'm surprised and I'm happy somehow that we actually have the production facility for hydroxyurea here. So what is your projection like? Because you say the project covers 5 years. Do you foresee that in the next 5 years, sickle cell warriors, as they are called, will have more reason to be grateful for your commitment and the engagement in this regard?
We hope so. We hope so, and we hope that we can present compelling evidence to convince both providers, parents, and caregivers that if they're eligible to take hydroxyurea, can engage in that type of therapy for to improve their outcomes in terms of the sickle cell warriors. So that's what we're hoping for.
Okay.
Our results. So we're going to do that. Number two, in that room, we're going to have representatives from the Nigerian Medical Association and other medical societies who also manage sickle cell disease. So in fact, there's a pediatric society here and they see patients with, and several other societies. And also, we want to make sure we engage the whole medical establishment, right?
Okay.
So we're talking about physicians, but it's not only physicians, it's also nurses that also take care of these patients, and just making sure that there is round engagement by this society in terms of their professionals. So that's what we hope to accomplish. That's Cameroon in Ghana, where I was born. They know of what progress has been made, and we're happy to consult with them in terms of also implementing something similar in their own sort of context.
So I'm going to ask whether you have planned to expand beyond the shores of Nigeria to other sister, particularly West African countries.
Right now, we're focused on Nigeria. We want to make sure we do this right, and we're able to do it in a timely way to benefit the patients of Nigeria. There's always opportunity to collaborate with other countries, I think, but for the first year, we want to make sure that we really, first couple of years, that we execute very, very well in Nigeria, specifically for Abuja. That will be the foundation for us then to expand, because we would have learned some lessons here that we know will be applicable to other contexts.
Okay, so but your collaboration is mainly with the University of Abuja?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Are there plans to also, involve other institutions and or facilities around the country, say Lagos, Port Harcourt, and other parts?
Great question. So Dr. Nudu has a great network called SparkNet, which has over 20 sickle cell disease centers around the entire country. So through that particular network, we know will be applicable to other contexts.
Okay, so but your collaboration is mainly with the University of Abuja?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Are there plans to also, involve other institutions and or facilities around the country?
All of these other sites. So we're talking about it. We've been talking about it. So it is in the plans to do that. But we want to make sure that we do our best effort here in Abuja and make sure that we are able to understand everything, understand the context, and then sort of build that infrastructure and build those capabilities before we spread.
All right, that's great. Any other thing you would want to
engage all of these other sites? So we're talking about it. We've been talking about it here in Abuja and make sure that we are able to understand,
know about what you're doing, and particularly with respect to sickle cell disease and use of hydroxyurea.
I think that this is an innovative collaborative endeavor between New York University and also the University of Abuja. And I think that this sort of sets a foundation for other work that can be done to affect health outcomes, not only for sickle cell disease, but cardiovascular disease and other things. Of them, Dr. DK OG and Dr. Obi Nudu, as I've stated before. So I'm very excited about being here. I look forward to coming to Abuja several times during the next 5 years or so. And I look forward to building the foundation where we can improve the lives of individuals with sickle cell disease. As I said, making Nigeria a model in which that model then can be replicated in other, also the University of Abuja. And I think that this sort of sets a foundation for other work that can be done to affect health outcomes, not only for sickle cell disease, but cardiovascular disease and other things. There are great researchers over at the University of Abuja, and so I'm very excited about being here. I look forward to coming to Abuja several times during the next 5 years or so, and I look forward to building the foundation where we can improve the lives of individuals with sickle cell disease. As I said, making Nigeria a model in which that model then can be replicated in other countries, African countries, over and over again.
So, but within Nigeria, Abuja is your first point of call. People always look towards Abuja as they have all the best of things. Everything good starts and stays in Abuja. So right there you have it. As they have all the best of things. Everything good starts and stays in Abuja. So right there you have it. That with time, this will also come to wherever is it you're watching us from. As far as
No, it's just been lovely being here. I really want to thank my host, Dr. Nudu, and her
devoting their time and resources in finding solutions to ease pains, especially. We talk about sickle cell disease. Anyone who has seen a patient or a warrior before will understand why this is very, very important. Anything that will lessen the pain definitely is welcome, and we are always here to help tell the world what you're doing in Abuja and in Nigeria and anywhere else. This is a home for you to call on us anytime. We'll be ready to have you. We've been talking with Professor Emmanuel Pepper, June Program, New York University, School of Global Public Health, New York, United States of America. Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you.
And we will take a break to go join the Investment Plus team. Thereafter, we'll be right back on Aso Morning. Do stay with us.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Investment Plus. Today we're looking at baby steps that will help you to build wealth. Now, building wealth is not an overnight process. It takes a lot of patience. It requires consistent effort and discipline from you. But the thing is, when you want to get started on building wealth, you have to. During COVID, a lot of my students actually did thrive because they had the emergency fund in place. You must aim to save at least 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in an account every time. Now, this for peace of mind and provide a safety net that you can fall back on in challenging times. It is important that you have that proper foundation. Hello and welcome to another episode of Investment Plus. Today we're looking at baby steps that will help you to build wealth. Now, building wealth is not an overnight process. It takes a lot of patience. It requires consistent effort and discipline from you. But the thing is, when you want to get started on building wealth, we're going to look at today on your just like a strong building needs a solid foundation of financial success, saving money, expected expenses. I remember during COVID, a lot of my students actually did thrive because they had the emergency fund in place. You count every time. Now, this fund will give you peace of mind and provide a safety net that you can fall foundation. So on your wealth building journey, don't forget to plan for the future. Set specific financial goals for yourself, whether it is saving for a dream home, funding your children's education, retiring comfortably. Break down these goals into actionable steps that you can take and then monitor your progress regularly. Have a clear vision of the future. Having a clear vision of the future will keep you motivated and focused. It's important. I was still listening to a mentor today talking about the importance. That's something so powerful. Goal setting, having a clear financial goal can actually change your earnings completely. So if you're not having the right income right now, you're not happy with where you are financially, have you tried setting different kinds of goals that will drive you harder than what you're currently working with? And the step debt. Now, debt for me, I always say it is stressful. I remember when I was at the bank, I was in debt a lot for onwards of 8 years. Day is to eliminate debt. Now, debt for me, I always say it is stressful. I remember when I was at the bank, I was in debt a lot onwards of 8 years. I was owing money, and I will have to call this creditor. Please don't take this month. Come next month. I had piles of them. Everything in my house was literally on debt.
the chairs, the fridge, everything. I mean, all these businesses, they want to sell those things to you, particularly if they're sure you have a consistent income. So it can really weigh you. Since I got out of debt, in 1 year, I traveled to 2 countries, took a master's, a short course with Harvard Business School. I was able to live the life that I really wanted to live just because I got out of debt. So you have to take charge of your finances by paying off any debt, whether high interest or zero interest, whatever kind of debt you have, you need to pay it off immediately. Now, the monies you're paying back as interest is actually the monies you should be creating wealth with. So whatever form of debt it is, you know it, and you need to start paying it down right now. You need to make a plan and start putting your resources towards that. As a matter of fact, when you're paying in debt, you don't have a lot of money to play around with anymore. You need to focus, pay it down, and then you can start actually living free and building wealth. Step 4, invest and grow. Once you have a strong financial foundation, it is time for you to put your money to work. Educate yourself about investment options, explore avenues such as stocks, real estate, retirement, whatever guidance regarding this, but you have to start with what you're comfortable with. Make sure that you don't put all your monies in one basket, and then seek professional advice where you need to. Don't go blind, don't go without information. As a matter of fact, the first key to investing is actually to investigate before you throw your money there. So over time, your investments will grow and multiply. Remember that it's not about how much you earn at all. It's about what you do with it, how much of it you keep and what you do with what you keep. By following these baby steps, establishing a solid foundation, eliminating debt and investing, planning for the future, you are creating a strong financial future for yourself. Thanks for watching today.
You're welcome back from that very impactful session. We hope that you've been able to learn a thing or two about financial management, and this is the much we have for you on today's edition of Aso Morning. Of course, till we join you again tomorrow, the same time, same station, we join you to have a very, very pleasant day ahead. My name is Osman Katun Umar. Bye-bye.